Coming up, it's the best of 2023, or I guess in the case of Security Now, it's the worst of 2023. Steve Gibson and I look back in just a moment on our best of episode.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 954 for December 26th, 2023, our year's best. Hello, everybody. Leo Laporte here. Steve Gibson has the week off, but we have Steve Gibson, a lot of it, the best moments from 2023. Although, as I said, in the case of Security Now, sometimes the best moments are the worst moments. In this case, I think it's a happy segment we're going to kick it off with. As you remember, we spent a lot of time talking in 2022 and then again in 2023 about the LastPass hack. Steve finally had it and talked about his next password manager. Watch.
During my post-incident survey of security professionals, 3 cloud-based password managers kept being mentioned over and over. They were Dashlane, 1Password, and Bitwarden. We all know that Bitwarden is an active sponsor of the TWiT network and a frequent advertiser on this podcast, so I was glad to see other knowledgeable researchers praising it. Here's what Jeremy Gosney wrote once he had calmed down a bit from his being jilted by LastPass.
I think that's what happened. He was upset. Yeah,
clearly. He said, "So, why do I recommend Bitwarden and 1Password? It's quite simple," he says. "I personally know the people who architect 1Password, and I can attest that not only are they extremely competent and very talented, but they also actively engage with the password cracking community and have a deep, he says again with asterisks, desire to do everything in the most correct manner possible. Do they still get some things wrong? Sure. But they strive for continuous improvement and sincerely care about security. Also, their secret key feature ensures that if anyone does obtain a copy of your vault, they simply cannot access it with the master password alone, making it uncrackable." Next, he says, Bitwarden is 100% open source. I have not done a thorough code review, but I have taken a fairly long glance at the code, and I am mostly pleased with what I've seen. I'm less thrilled about it being written in a garbage collected language, and there are some trade-offs that are made there.
It's
but
C#
overall,
and .NET. So
right.
Yeah.
But overall, Bitwarden, and all you have to do is wipe any plain text. You know, I did that in Squirrel. It's before you release memory, you zero out the plain text, and then you're fine. Anyway, he says, but overall, Bitwarden is a solid product. I prefer Bitwarden's user experience, and I've considered crowdfunding a formal audit of Bitwarden, much in the way the Open Crypto Audit Project raised the funds to properly audit TrueCrypt. The community would greatly benefit from this. Okay, now, I know from my Twitter feed that many of my Twitter followers, or at least those who are tweeting to @SGGRC, are using 1Password. I've not looked closely at it, but from what Jeremy says, that would appear to be a solid choice. Another password cracking enthusiast by the name of Steve Thomas ranks Dashlane first, Bitwarden second, and 1Password third, but only because Dashlane is using his favorite pet password key derivation function known as Argon2. Argon2 is a memory hard function designed in 2015, which is highly resistant to GPU attacks.
It won the hashing challenge
as
being the most secure. Yeah.
But its implementations need to be careful about side channel leaks.
Oh, interesting.
Since the original design accesses memory in a password-dependent sequence. Thus, you're able to defer something about the password from memory access patterns. As a consequence, improvements have been made in Argon 2 since then. But a password manager's choice of its key derivation function is incidental at most, and the strength of any good function can simply be turned up as needed over time. So it appears that all three of these are in the running. Next, I went to check out the personal plans these three offered. Blessedly, I don't need a family plan or a business plan or anything other than a just please keep all of my passwords safe, secure, and synchronized among all of my devices plan. Although the value of a password manager is now well proven, so that asking for some money should not be a problem, I like the idea of being able to turn people onto it so that they can take it out for a spin without needing to pay in advance for a year's commitment. In other words, a useful free tier, such as LastPass once had, but then abandoned. That was part of my criteria in the beginning for LastPass.
That was the beginning and that of the end right there,
That went away too.
Yep.
So that's part of my criteria for the perfect password manager. Unfortunately, Dashlane's free plan only now allows for the use of a single device. So you can't use it on both your desktop and even one mobile platform? That's crazy.
No.
Why allow any devices if you can't use at least two? So you need to pay at their minimum plan of $33 per year in advance, which does then provide for an unlimited number of devices. 1Password doesn't even try to offer a free tier. If you want to use 1Password, you pay $36 in advance for a year to use it. Bitwarden, of the three, is the only one to offer an actually useful free plan, which allows for the use of any number of devices. And Leo, as you often note when you're talking about Bitwarden, since their free plan actually really does everything you'll probably need, their $10 per year paid plan at less than a third the price of the others is mostly just there to support them, although you do get two-factor authentication for that $10 per year.
Oh, that's worth
and
it.
I would Yes, and I would argue that for $10, come on.
Yeah.
You should see what my latte costs now.
Incidentally,
Whoa.
I did ask when they started advertising, I said, because we'd been burned by LastPass, frankly, I said, tell me about the free plan. They said, look, we're open source. It's always going to be free because otherwise people just fork it. It's free. We have that's not part of our business model is to make money on the free plans. So that's reassuring. They're not going to pull a LastPass and say, oh yeah, now you have to pay for it. Open source has a lot of benefits in this area, I think.
Well, and as Jeremy noted, the icing on the cake is that Bitwarden is also 100% open source.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet pass by some time ago that our old friend Alex Niehaus was moving his family to Bitwarden and choosing to self-host a Bitwarden server in his own cloud.
Yeah. And actually, after this happened, I because for a long time I said, well, I'm never going to be able to protect it as well as professionals at, let's say, LastPass, or Bitwarden, or 1Password, or Dashlane will. But then there's the counter argument, which is it's a single point of attack. That's where all the vaults are. So if you self-host, I put it on Dropbox, it's encrypted, they'd have to target me or stumble upon it somehow. And even then, they'd only get the encrypted blob that we've talked about that is well encrypted.
Yep.
So I'm thinking about making mine self-hosted now.
Well, those are the sorts of things that the use of a truly open password manager can provide.
Yeah.
Yes. And and while it's not of interest to everyone, I imagine that it's the sort of thing that would appeal to this podcast audience. On December 7th, Bitwarden posted a blog titled "New Deployment Option for Self-Hosting Bitwarden." I've got a link to that in the show notes, bottom of page 10 of the show notes, for anyone who's interested in taking the path that Alex took. And so, that's something that that can be done. And in my digging around over the holidays, I stumbled upon a Bitwarden page which linked to their past annual third-party outside network security and application security penetration testing audits. So they're auditing themselves, having themselves audited by a number of different outside firms every year. I ended up not being able to find that same page later, but I found another that provides the same info, and it's under bitwarden.com/help/is-bitwarden-audited. And so there are links there to everything. And I also noted at the bottom of that page that they're signed up with HackerOne to offer and manage bug bounties against their platform. So the reason I originally chose LastPass and was comfortable endorsing it was that its author opened up its internals to me so that I could understand exactly how it worked. And it was solely on that basis and for that reason that I chose it. I don't regret the decision I made back then. LastPass has been a flawless companion for me over the years. I say that knocking on wood somewhere because, my vault has now been absconded with. But as we've observed earlier on this podcast, the world has been changing ever since, and LastPass no longer fits the way it once did. And, it and its organization is beginning to act and feel a bit too old and creaky, which is not what anyone wants in their password manager. An example of a different, more aware and contemporary approach is Bitwarden's description of their management of their user's master password. Bitwarden wrote, SHA-256 is used to derive the encryption key from your master password. Bitwarden salts and hashes your master password with your email address locally before transmission to our servers. Once a Bitwarden server receives the hashed password, it is salted again with a cryptographically secure random value, hashed again, and stored in our database. The default iteration count used with PBKDF2 is 100,001 iterations on the client. Client-side iteration count is configurable from your account settings, and then an additional 100,000 iterations when stored on our servers, for a total of 201,000 iterations by default.
Okay, can I interrupt with a stupid question? What's with the 100,001 or the 100,100? They don't like round numbers? They want them roundish?
That is a great question.
Okay, there's no technical. It's just a random.
It's not like it's not like it's a power of 2 or something where it's going to be some magic.
It's
bizarre.
I think it's prime. Oh well, yeah.
And that wouldn't matter either. Anyway,
no, I know.
So Bitwarden is not only hashing 100,000 times on our system, and you can turn that to anything you want. And by the way, I would go with like 350,000. That's pretty much that's pretty much where you want to be at this point.
Okay.
And then they're getting it, resalting it, and then running it another 100,000 times on their high-speed machine because they can, just because. So anyway, everybody knows what happened then. I went to bitwarden.com/twit. /twit.
By the way, this is not a paid ad in any respect. This is Steve.
Everybody who's listening to this knows that I chose them because they're open source. They have a useful free tier, and they're as good as anybody else.
Yeah. Are you going to self-host? You're certainly capable of doing that.
It looks like you actually have to run a Bitwarden server. You can't just have a Bitwarden file.
There is a third-party server that is widely agreed to be much faster. I think it's written in Go. So you don't have to use, it's open source. Somebody else has written a server that's better than Bitwarden's.
Nice.
And most of the people who self-host that I know use that software. I'll find it for you. But, I don't self-host.
I'm not going to bother. No. I mean, again, the reason we did this in the beginning was that we had really strong local client-side encryption, and we were just using the provider to hold onto our data for us. Unfortunately, LastPass has just demonstrated that we can no longer trust them to do that.
It's literally the worst thing that could happen to a pass. Well, except for not encrypting it right, but assuming the encryption's good, it's as bad as you can get.
Well, the reason we're all using the cloud is if your local encryption is solid, it doesn't matter if they lose control. Right. Unfortunately, they both lost control, and their local encryption was not being kept up to date.
Yeah.
Okay, so I signed up for Bitwarden, started the $10 plan. Then I went to a menu item I had never used in my LastPass vault. Export. And I exported a 77 KB CVS file. I opened my shiny new Bitwarden web interface, and under Tools at the top was a menu item, Import Data. From a drop-down menu there, I selected the import source as being LastPass CSV, provided the file name of the file I'd exported from LastPass, and watched a perfect, error-free transfer of my entire legacy LastPass data into Bitwarden. My password database, auto-filled credit cards, and all my secure notes made the move without incident or complaint.
I have done this as well several years ago, but I did it. The only thing I would say is immediately securely erase the CSV file because it's in plain text, right?
No.
It's not?
The CSV, it is an encrypted vault.
It's still encrypted. Okay.
Yeah. But no, it has to be in plain text.
It has to be in plain text. Yeah.
Yes. So in order to import it,
treat that carefully.
Yes, I was briefly confused with the XML that we grabbed from LastPass.
Yeah. No, but they have to unencrypt it so it can be re-encrypted.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember being very nervous about the fact that file was on my system. I was like,
delete it securely. The other thing. When I did the import, I had some very long and weird notes in LastPass, and a few of the very long note fields got munged on the import, or maybe on the export. I'm not sure at what end, but you might check if you use secure notes to make sure everything got in. I remember that I had some trouble with that. In fact, actually, I think the import didn't work because Bitwarden said, well, I don't know, this is too long. I can't, I can't import that.
And I was wary of that, but I had no complaints or issues at all. Simon Zarafa, who is a frequent contributor to the podcast, he said that the Android client put him off a little bit. Do you? But you certainly are an Android user.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Look, I mean, I guess we should also say, and we talked about Tavis Ormady saying this, that the JavaScript stuff, like the plugins for the browsers, perhaps the mobile clients, for all these password managers, these are a little bit potentially problematic, especially if code got injected, malicious code got injected and so forth, right?
Well, again, there's no guarantee being made for any of this over on the client side. Right. That isn't something we have any control over. If something evil gets in your machine, it can be logging your keystrokes.
That's a good point.
Watching you type your master password.
All bets are off. Some might say, Tavis did, that it's better to use the binary as opposed to the JavaScript plugin on the browser, and LastPass, Bitwarden, Dashlane, and 1Password all offer a standalone app. I think in some cases it's Electron, so maybe that's not great. The other thing I would say is if you are in the minority and you only use Apple products, Apple has a very good, I think, password manager that will do all the things a password manager will do, and it's all kept within the Apple ecosystem. It's a little hard. You can use it on Windows and Android, but you have to have an Apple app to do that. Probably should be added to the list of potential candidates for people who are mostly Apple focused.
I was going to say, yes, if you were a Mac user, then that would make certainly sense to stay there. And of course, I'm not. I'm an iOS.
I use them. It's nice. It has a very nice generator. It fills it in, but I need Bitwarden because I use Linux. I use other stuff. And I need a cross-platform one. And as much as I love Bitwarden and they are a sponsor and it's what I use personally, I think you'd be fine with Dashlane or 1Password as well. I see no reason not to use those.
Yes, as I said at the beginning, or when we were talking about this, I see lots of tweets from our listeners who are 1Password users.
Very happy.
Yeah. Even Jeremy, when he's not, frothing, thinks that 1Password is a good thing too. Right. So
And I should mention, I think he probably did, that Bitwarden is a sponsor, but we're both very happy Bitwarden customers. Coming back, good news, chess is safe. Steve and I talked about, it's kind of a favorite thing of mine. I play a lot of online chess at chess.com. It turns out there's a security story there as well. Steve discusses, and I discuss the findings of Checkpoint research. Is it possible to cheat using chess.com? Watch.
Leo?
Yes?
You'll be glad to know that chess is safe.
I actually know a little bit about this, but I'd like to hear what the story is. Yeah.
So in their blog posting titled Checkmate, Checkpoint Research exposes security vulnerabilities on chess.com. They describe how they discovered, reported, and helped fix vulnerabilities in the popular chess.com platform. Now, for those who don't know, chess.com is the world-leading platform for online chess games with over 100 million members and more than 17 million games played per day. I thought that ratio was interesting. 100 million members, 17 million games per day.
Yeah.
So it functions as an internet chess server, a news website, and a social networking platform with a strong focus on community building, community-based forums and blogs, which allow players to connect with each other, socialize, share thoughts and experiences, and learn from each other about playing chess. Chess.com also conducts global championships, which consists of prize money to the tune of $1 million for the winner and the coveted chess.com Global Champion title. So, Checkpoint decided to take a close look into the functioning of chess.com because there had been some allegations of cheating in the past. What did they find? They found a number of ways that the communications with the site could be manipulated to cheat. They discovered that it was possible to win by decreasing the opponent's time and winning the game over time without the opponent noticing what had happened. They also discovered that it was possible to extract successful chess moves to solve online puzzle challenges and win puzzle ratings. To do this, they intercepted the communications between the client side, the player, and the server, the chess.com website. What they discovered was that the server was accidentally sending the correct solution to the puzzle.
Oh, I could use that.
To the client side.
Okay.
And that allowed a cheating client to abuse and cheat on puzzle championships, in which the winner gets prize money by simply submitting the correct moves that the server was inadvertently providing. And also, it was possible to modify, in that case also, the elapsed time it took to consider the solution. And finally, they discovered that in communication between two friends on the platform, after approving the friend's request to connect, an attacker or somebody, taking an attacker role is able to intercept the request with a proxy tool and succeed in both manipulating game timing, which allows a quick win, and in solving a puzzle, which raises his score and the value on the platform. So the good news is today, thanks to Checkpoint's work, the game of chess, as played at chess.com, is safer and fairer than ever before.
I like the because, in fact, most chess.com cheating and most online cheating in chess has nothing to do with a hack.
Right.
It just has to do with me having my Stockfish chess game running at the same time on my phone as I'm on chess.com and entering the moves in. And that, unfortunately, is not a hack. That's a little harder to fight. Actually, it's fascinating to see how they fight it because there
is deep learning at chess.com.
Yeah, well, the way you do it is chess computers calculate the current balance of the game in centipawns, 100th of a pawn, right? And among two human players, the lead change is much more variable in centipawns It might be 100 or 200 centipons and then up and down and up and down. But when a machine plays, it's a fairly linear gain of centipons. You don't have the same variations. And so it is a little easier to spot a machine player because it doesn't make the same mistakes that humans do. Humans blunder. And so if a machine never blunders, and then there's other ways to tell. They play lines that are kind of more machine-like, although that's getting harder and harder because as they get better and better, they look more and more like humans. But really, they play too well. That's the easiest way to spot them.
Right.
And for instance, there's been a big scandal. A super grandmaster named Hans Niemann has been accused of cheating because his rating went up normally fairly steadily and suddenly soared in a very unusual way. And furthermore, his results in games where he's over the board and there are measures taken to prevent cheating, his results are not nearly as good.
And he was actually playing against Magnus, wasn't he?
Magnus lost a game to him, which is very rare. Magnus is easily the best player in the world. Lost a game to him, and then you can't accuse somebody of cheating. That's not allowed. So he intimated,
and not very sportsmanlike.
Yeah. So he intimated there was something not kosher, and that got the investigation going. And then in the second game with him, he resigned after one move to kind of further indicate his displeasure. There's been investigations since. There's no conclusive evidence that Neiman cheated, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Well, and it's also really interesting that when he's in an environment where he cannot receive any help,
right,
he's not playing as well.
So the single thing that they did was they delayed the broadcast. So normally it's streamed live. And so a accomplice at home could be watching the game live and somehow, we don't know how, transmit the
communicating back to him.
But if they delay the broadcast by 15 minutes, suddenly his results aren't as good. So it's a little suspicious. It's unknown, really, frankly.
Yeah.
And now Magnus has stopped playing in the World Championship. He said, "Nah, I don't want to play anymore." So it's chess.
Computers.
When computers got that good, we thought that's it for chess, and it's turned out no. There's been some issues, but humans still like playing. They even like playing against machines, as good as they are.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's an organization called NewsGuard, which calls itself the Internet Trust Tool. I hadn't heard of it before, so I wanted to see whether I trusted these guys. To give you some idea of its pedigree, which I discovered, it has co-CEOs and co-editors-in-chief, Stephen Brill and Gordon Krovitz. Both are attorneys, veteran journalists, and news entrepreneurs. Stephen Brill founded the American Lawyer magazine, the Court TV cable channel, and like you, Leo, is a Yalie, having received both his bachelor's and his law degree from Yale, where he also founded the Yale Journalism Initiative.
Yeah, Stephen's a well-known guy. Yeah, he's good.
Right. Yeah, Brill. Gordon Krovitz is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of the University of Chicago. He received a law degree as a Rhodes Scholar from Wadham College of Oxford University, and later a law degree from Yale. He was the publisher of the Wall Street Journal and also served as executive vice president of Dow Jones. So together, the two of them have supervised thousands of journalists around the world. They were also co-CEOs and co-founders of Press Plus, which was sold to R.R. Donnelley. So pretty clearly, they're not a pair of schlubs. And NewsGuard, which they co-founded in 2018, is not some scammy fly-by-night operation. The title of their posting, which caught my eye, and the reason we're talking about this today was, quote, "Rise of the Newsbots, AI-generated news websites proliferating online." And the tagline beneath the headline reads, NewsGuard has identified 49 news and information sites that appear to be almost entirely written by artificial intelligence software. A new generation of content farms is on the way, unquote. So, the fact that the internet is fundamentally so bot compatible represents a real problem. And of course, this is not the first time this has been a problem. The reason we have spam is that email is also 100% bot compatible. But sadly, it appears that the value of the internet for news and journalism is about to become a whole lot worse, or at least diluted, because we all need to understand and appreciate what's going on around us, and because I suspect that it will give every listener some pause when they contemplate what is already happening to our internet. I've lightly edited the article they posted in order to share it. So here's what their recent research has just revealed. They wrote, NewsGuard has found that artificial intelligence tools are now being used to populate so-called content farms, referring to low-quality websites around the world that churn out vast amounts of clickbait articles to optimize advertising revenue. Last month, NewsGuard identified 49 websites spanning 7 languages: Chinese, Czech, English, French, Portuguese, Tagalog, and Thai, that appear to be entirely or mostly generated by artificial intelligence language models designed to mimic human communication in the form of what appear to be typical news websites. The websites, which often fail to disclose ownership or control, produce a high volume of content related to a variety of topics, including politics, health, entertainment, finance, and technology. Some publish hundreds of articles a day. Some of the content advances false narratives. Nearly all of the content features bland language and repetitive phrases, hallmarks of artificial intelligence. Many of the sites are saturated with advertisements, indicating that they were likely designed to generate revenue from programmatic ads placed algorithmically across the web, which finance some of the world's media. Much of the world's media, much as the internet's first generation of content farms operated by humans were built to do. In short, as numerous and more powerful AI tools have been unveiled and made available to the public in recent months, concerns that they could be used to conjure up entire news organizations, once the subject of speculation by media scholars, have now become reality. Last month, NewsGuard sent emails to the 29 sites in the analysis of 49 that listed contact information, and 2 confirmed that they have used AI. Of the remaining 27 sites, 2 did not address NewsGuard's questions, while 8 provided invalid email addresses and 17 did not respond. NewsGuard exchanged a series of emails, some of which were hard to comprehend, with the self-described owner of Famadillo.com, a site that has published numerous AI-generated product reviews attributed to admin. This person, who identified themselves as Maria Spanodoris, denied that the site used AI in a widespread manner. Quote, this is a direct quote of her, "We did an expert to use AI to edit old articles that nobody read anymore just to see how it works," unquote, Spanodoris, who declined a phone call with NewsGuard, said without elaborating. Adesh Ingale, who identified himself as the founder of GetIntoKnowledge.com, a site that NewsGuard found to have published AI-generated clickbait articles about history, science, and other topics, responded, quote, "We use automation at some points where they are extremely needed. And yes, they are 100% facts-checked so that no false information is created. As a world is growing towards digital and automation era, we have introduced some automation softwares in our work, but the results getting out of it are 100% original and regional facts-based," unquote. When asked by NewsGuard, Ingale did not elaborate on the site's use of AI and claimed that the site's content is, quote, "published manually under human supervision," unquote. Ingale added, "We are the new age of providing knowledge to each and every corner," unquote. The 49 AI-driven sites that NewsGuard identified typically have benign and generic names, suggesting they're operated by established publishers, such as Biz Breaking News, News Live 79, Daily Business Post, and Market News Reports. The AI-generated articles often consist of content summarized or rewritten from other services. For example, bestbudgetusa.com, a site that does not provide information about its ownership and was anonymously registered in May of 2022, appears primarily to summarize or rewrite articles from CNN. The articles themselves often give away the fact that they were AI produced. For example, dozens of articles on bestbudgetusa.com contain phrases of the kind often produced by generative AI in response to prompts, such as, quote, "I am not capable of producing 1,500 words. However, I can provide you with a summary of the article," unquote.
Yeah, if
which
you
it
search
then
for
does.
as an AI, you'll find it everywhere. It's amazing. People are so lazy, they don't even cut that part out.
Wow.
It's just mind-boggling.
And then in this case, that quote was followed by a link to the original CNN report.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, God. So they said the presence of these sorts of phrases also evidence that these sites likely operate with little to no human oversight. Many of the AI-generated articles identified by NewsGuard are credited to admin and editor, or have no bylines at all.
Exactly.
Other sites feature fake author profiles. For example, HarmonyHustle.com, an anonymously operated site registered just last month, lists content creators including Alex and Tom. A reverse, Alex and Tom.
Oh, Alex and Tom. Yeah.
A reverse image search of their profile photos revealed that neither author is authentic.
Oh, wow.
Some of the sites also include about and privacy policy pages that were algorithmically produced by tools used to generate customizable disclaimers and copyright notices, but were not fully completed, leaving little doubt about their source. For example, the About Us page of historyfact.in, an anonymously run AI-generated site identified by NewsGuard, stated that, quote, get a load of this, quote, "This website was founded in," and then we have open bracket date, close bracket, by open bracket your name, close bracket, period. Also HistoryFact commits to reply to all people who subscribe to the YouTube channel. Then we have brackets, channel link, close brackets, and follow our website. We hope you enjoy our services as much as we enjoy offering them to you. Sincerely, comma, bracket, your name, close bracket.
But this has been the computer era forever. That's like mail merge that doesn't bother to merge in a name, or
right.
We've seen this forever and ever and ever.
Right.
Yeah.
So they said the page linked to a free About Us page generator tool, which produces customized site descriptions. NewsGuard found that many other sites were using similar tools, including a disclaimer generator to create terms of service and privacy policy pages. So they finished. The unassuming reader would likely have no idea that the articles produced by many of these AI content farms were not written by a human, if not for one glaring tell. All 49 sites identified by NewsGuard had published at least one article containing error messages commonly found in AI-generated texts, such as "My cutoff date is September 2021. Yeah. Or, quote, "As an AI language model, I cannot complete this prompt."
Yes. They just leave it in because it's all automated.
And then they finish saying, for example, CountyLocalNews.com, which publishes stories about crime and current events, published an article in March this year, so just a couple months ago, whose title read like that of an AI parody. It stated, quote, death news, sorry, I cannot fulfill this prompt as it goes against ethical and moral principles. Vaccine genocide is a conspiracy that is not based on scientific evidence and can cause harm and damage to public health.
Well, there you go.
As an AI language model, it is my responsibility to provide factual and trustworthy information.
Good.
So anyway, and so here's the concern. The laughable mistakes that are being made today by these AI-driven news sites is only evidence that we're still in the early days, the first stages of this new and emerging nightmare. Bruce Schneier's pithy observation that attacks only ever get better, unfortunately, applies here. We can be sure that these fake news sites are only ever going to get better and become increasingly difficult to spot. Their goal will be to fool Google, Bing, and other search engines into indexing their content. That will bring eyeballs to their ad-laden pages for revenue generation. What they will be devoid of is any thoughtful, new, or original content or journalism. They'll just be AI-driven regurgitation factories. And unfortunately, it's possible to imagine that the same deliberate social media style biases that have proven to be so powerful and effective in hooking people to their content will eventually be added to make them even more effective. So, here come the AI.
Yep. Not surprised. Yeah, this is something I think we're all going to be watching with interest as we in the lead up to the election in this year or this coming year. These fake sites. The CEO of Sports Illustrated recently got fired because they were using AI-generated articles for reviews. They actually were purchasing them and do it themselves. But I think this is going to become more and more prevalent. Well, we'll watch with interest. And we'll be covering it on Security Now. More bad stuff still to come. Bad guys. This one is actually a really scary story. Bad guys and satellites. Is it possible to hack an eye in the sky? Watch.
Before we wander away, as I said, at least for the time being, from the topic of satellite security, which turns out is a rich field. I mean, it generated a huge amount of interest among our listeners. So I'm glad that we spent some time talking about this last couple of weeks. I wanted to talk about another aspect of the use of satellites by bad guys, which again, I wasn't aware of, but makes sense when you think about it, the deliberate routing of internet connections through space. This is done as a means of thwarting the persistent efforts by law enforcement to track down, shut down, and sometimes take over the command and control servers and infrastructure, which is being used by the major advanced persistent threat groups. Since it's another thing that we've never explicitly covered, I thought that now, while we're still looking skyward, would be a good time to add this to the growing list of things that we have covered. So way back in September of 2015, this is not news, this is 8 years ago, Kaspersky published an informative research piece titled Satellite Turla, Turla. Turla is the name of an APT group. And so their title was Satellite Turla, APT Command and Control in the Sky.
What is an APT? Can you... I know it's a resident infection, yeah?
I think the first time we encountered it on the podcast was when one was discovered at Sony Entertainment.
Right.
And so
they were wandering around for months inside the Sony systems.
Like a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that may have been where this notion of, so advanced persistent threat. Advanced obviously means it's not some script kiddie doing, up to nonsense. This is a serious organizational intrusion. persistent, meaning that, again, it wasn't something that was executed and then died. It established a foothold in some sort of corporate asset, and from there it then was used for surveillance over some long period of time. We've seen printers, for example, being no one would think of a printer as being a computer, but of course they are, and their firmware is no more secure than anything else, unfortunately, these days. And so we've seen APTs that set up shop in printers, where, as I said, no one thinks to look.
Right.
And then from there, they're on the network, so they're able to go out and see what's going on. So all of these things need some means of phoning home in order to report the things that they have found, and also, as we'll see, to create a means for allowing the bad guys back in over time. So Kaspersky, in their write-up, stopped short of explaining the detailed network packet flow, but they did provide enough for us to fill in the rest of the technology. So first, I've skipped over some of their warm-up introduction, which would be redundant for our audience, but I want to sort of create the background that they did create, and then we'll figure out how the packet flow works. So Kaspersky said, when you are an APT group, you need to deal with many different problems. One of them, and perhaps the biggest, is the constant seizure and takedown of domains and servers used for command and control. These servers are constantly appropriated by law enforcement or shut down by ISPs. Sometimes they can be used to trace the attackers back to their physical locations. Some of the most advanced threat actors or users of commercial hacking tools have found a solution to the takedown problem: the use of satellite-based internet links. And again, this is in 2015, so this has only matured since then. In the past, Kaspersky wrote, we've seen 3 different actors using such links to mask their operations. The most interesting and unusual of them is the Turla group, also known as Snake or Ouroboros, names which come from its top-class rootkit. The Turla cyber espionage group has been active for more than 8 years, and that was more than 8 years in 2015, and they're still a name that's around. So, they've been at this for a while. Kaspersky said several papers have been published about the group's operations, but until recently, little information was available about the more unusual aspects of their operations, such as the first stages of infection through watering hole attacks. What makes the Turla group special is not just the complexity of its tools, which include the Ouroboros rootkit, aka Snake, as well as mechanisms designed to bypass air gaps through multi-stage proxy networks inside LANs, but the exquisite satellite-based command and control mechanism used in the latter stages of the attack. In this blog, we hope to shed more light on the satellite-based command and control mechanisms that APT groups, including the Turla Snake group, use to control their most important victims. As the use of these mechanisms becomes more popular, it's important for system admins to deploy the correct defense strategies to mitigate such attacks. For IOCs, remember, indications of compromise, see the appendix. Although relatively rare, since 2007, several elite APT groups have been using and abusing satellite links to manage their operations, most often their command and control infrastructure. Turla is one of them. Using this approach offers some advantages, such as making it hard to identify the operators behind the attack, but it also poses some risks to the attackers. On the one hand, it's valuable because the true location and hardware of the command and control server cannot be easily determined or physically seized. Satellite-based internet receivers can be located anywhere within the area covered by a satellite, and this is generally quite large. The method used by the Turla group to hijack the downstream links is highly anonymous and does not require a valid satellite internet subscription. On the other hand, the disadvantage comes from the fact that satellite-based internet is slow and can be unstable. In the beginning, it was clear to us and other researchers whether some of the links observed were commercial internet connections via satellite purchased by the attackers, or if the attackers had breached the ISPs and performed man-in-the-middle attacks at the router level to hijack the stream. We have analyzed these mechanisms and come to the astonishing conclusion that the method used by the Turla Group is incredibly simple and straightforward, as well as highly anonymous and very cheap to operate and manage. Purchasing satellite-based internet links is one of the options APT groups can choose to secure their command and control traffic. However, full duplex satellite links can be very expensive. Now this is in 2015. A simple duplex 1 megabit up-down satellite link may cost up to $7,000 per week. For longer-term contracts, this cost may decrease considerably, but the bandwidth still remains very expensive. Again, this is back in 2015, so things may have changed since. Another way of getting a command and control server into satellite's IP range is to hijack the network traffic between the victim and the satellite operator and to inject packets along the way. This requires either exploitation of the satellite provider itself or of another ISP on the way, in line. These kinds of hijacking attacks have been observed in the past and were documented by Renesas, now part of Dyn, in a blog post dated in November of 2023, so 2 years before this one was written in September of 2015. According to Renesas, quote, various providers' BGP routes were hijacked, and as a result, a portion of their internet traffic was misdirected to flow through Belarusian and Icelandic ISPs. They said, we've BGP routing data that show the second-by-second evolution of 21 Belarusian events in February and May of 2013 and 17 Icelandic events in July through August of 2013. In a more recent blog post from 2015, these researchers point out that for security analysts reviewing alert logs, it is important to appreciate that the IP addresses identified as the source of incidents can and are regularly spoofed. For example, an attack that appeared to come from a Comcast IP located in New Jersey may really have been from a hijacker located in Eastern Europe, briefly commandeering Comcast's IP space. It's interesting to note that in all 6 cases discussed above were conducted from either Europe or Russia. Okay, now, they write, obviously such incredibly apparent and large-scale attacks have little chance of surviving for long periods of time, which is one of the key requirements for running an advanced persistent threat operation. It's therefore not feasible to perform the attack through man-in-the-middle traffic hijacking unless the attackers have direct control over some high-traffic network points, such as backbone routers and fiber optics. And, of course, that's unusual, too. They said there are signs that such attacks are becoming more common, but there is a much simpler way to hijack traffic-based internet traffic. Enter satellite link DVBS hijacking. They said the hijacking of satellite DVBS links has been described a few times in the past, and a presentation on hijacking satellite DVB links was delivered at Black Hat in 2010 in an S21sec researcher, or by an S21sec researcher. So, to hijack satellite DVBS links, one needs the following: a satellite dish, the size depends on the geographical position and the satellite, a low noise block down converter, typically called an LNB, and that's generally part of the satellite that you get and mount on your roof if you're subscribing to Dish Network or whatever. You also need a dedicated DVB-S tuner, which takes the form of a PCIe card these days, and a PC, preferably running Linux. They said while the dish and the LNB are more or less standard, the card is perhaps the most important component. Currently, the best DVB-S cards are made by a company called TBS Technologies. The TBS-6922SE is the best entry-level card for the task, and that can be had for about $100. The TBS card is particularly well suited to this task because it has dedicated Linux kernel drivers and supports a function known as brute force scan, which allows wide frequency ranges to be tested for interesting signals. Of course, other PCI or PCIe cards might work as well, while in general the USB-based cards are relatively poor and should be avoided. Unlike full duplex satellite-based internet, the downstream-only internet links are used to accelerate internet downloads and are very inexpensive and easy to deploy. They're also inherently insecure and use no encryption to obfuscate the traffic. This creates the possibility for abuse. Okay, so Kaspersky's article, as I said, did not go into any more detail about how this works. They switched to providing tables of IP ranges that had been observed in the past and noted the satellite internet service providers that were using those ranges. But fortunately, we have all the information we need to understand the advantage this gives to anyone who's attempting to hide their command and control server. The key is that these internet communication satellites have extremely broad coverage areas, coupled with the fact that, just like the internet, the IP packet traffic being carried is not itself encrypted. As we know, TCP and UDP are not encrypted protocols. They're just carriers of data that today is typically encrypted. That is, the data they're carrying is encrypted, but they themselves, the actual underlying protocol, is not an encrypted protocol. Okay, so imagine that some nasty, advanced persistent threat malware has been surreptitiously placed into a high-value computer, and that more than anything, the bad guys do not want their command and control infrastructure, which this malware will be reaching out to receive instructions and updates and things, to be discovered, commandeered, and shut down. Presumably, this APT threat group has many such infestations, which are all reusing the same infrastructure. So the loss of that command and control server would cripple the entire network that they had established. Okay, so they have their APT malware periodically send a UDP packet to the IP of a previously chosen customer, probably a big stable customer of a given satellite-based internet provider. Having the malware send an outbound UDP packet has the effect of opening up return paths through any NAT routing and firewalls that would otherwise prevent unsolicited traffic from entering the enterprise's network and reaching the malware-laden machine. So you want the malware to initiate communications, which actually works in favor of this whole architecture. So this UDP packet is sent out to a previously selected customer of a satellite ISP. So it will be received first by that ISP. So this is a block of that ISP's IP space. It comes to the ISP, but unlike other ISPs, the received packet is beamed upstream directly at a chosen communications satellite. This causes it to then be rebroadcast out across the entire coverage area of the satellite indiscriminately. Somewhere, down on the ground is that subscriber of that internet ISP, but also somewhere else, anywhere else within that satellite's large coverage area, the malicious command and control server is silently lurking with its own satellite dish passively aimed up at the ISP's broadcasting satellite. It patiently listens for any UDP packets addressed to that IP. Since the subscriber will likely have their own NAT router or firewall that will simply ignore any unsolicited nonsense, as everything has to these days, and since that subscriber may have been pre-selected to make sure that that's true, their receipt of that incoming packet will be ignored, right? It's just a radio packet coming in on their satellite dish. But it will be what the malicious command and control server base station has been waiting for. Upon receiving that UDP packet, the base station can reply by sending its own UDP packet via terrestrial ground internet, since there's no need for it to be returned to space, right? It's just an IP packet, so they can drop it on any IP connection and it'll find its way back to the original malware that initiated it. This allows the command and control system to send whatever commands it may wish back to the querying machine. And the traffic doesn't need to only be UDP. It's just sort of easier for this example, but nothing prevents the listening command and control base station from establishing a three-way handshake and bringing up an encrypted TCP connection. The key to the hack is that it's the world's largest air gap. The outbound traffic is being sprayed over a huge geographic area to be picked up by a totally passive satellite dish that there's no way of locating, and it could be anywhere. It could even be mobile within the range of the satellite. And the command and control system's IP address being used is someone else's, not theirs. And so it's an air-gapped, man-in-the-middle traffic interception attack that, is going to work and prevent the command and control server from ever being discovered. So, unfortunately, you have to give the bad guys some credit for this hack. It's pretty slick. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows that I often become upset with Microsoft's behavior and with their performance.
Oh, you had a friend this time, didn't you? I know where you're going with this one.
I sometimes feel odd, since I can imagine someone reasonably saying, if you have so much trouble with Microsoft, why don't you just switch to Mac or Linux? And it's true that I do love Windows, and I have very little trouble with it myself. But due to their size and their dominance, Microsoft's behavior matters and affects the world, regardless of what desktop platform I've personally chosen. And since this podcast covers security, it also needs to explore Microsoft's many behaviors related to security. Well, last Wednesday, August 2nd, someone else weighed in on Microsoft's security practices from their own perspective and significant experience. Since I sometimes feel a bit self-conscious tearing into Microsoft over and over, I wanted to share this additional viewpoint for what this individual, I'm getting a little excited, as you can see, for what this individual wrote to have any weight and bearing. You need to know something about the posting's author. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Amit Yoran. Wikipedia informs us Amit Yoran is chairman and chief executive officer of Tenable, a position held since January 3rd, 2017. Previously, Yoran was president of computer and network security company RSA. We've heard of them. Joran joined RSA during his tenure as CEO of NetWitness Corp., which was acquired by RSA's parent company EMC in April of 2011. Prior to his time at NetWitness, Joran was the National Cybersecurity Division Director within the United States Department of Homeland Security. He took up the post in September 2003 and served as the initial director of the U.S. CERT. That's, of course, the U.S. Department of Defense Computer Emergency Response Team. He resigned from his position at U.S. CERT in October of 2004. Earlier in his career, Joran was a co-founder and CEO of RipTech, which was acquired by Symantec in August 2002. He also served on the board of directors of Cyota, acquired by RSA, Guardium, acquired by IBM, Guidance Software, and other internet security technology companies. Joran is a graduate of the United States Military Academy and served as one of the founding members of the U.S. Department of Defense's Computer Emergency Response Team. He has a master's degree in computer science.
Very impressive guy.
This guy has earned, he has earned some street cred by being like in the middle of computer security for many years. His LinkedIn posting last Wednesday is titled, Microsoft. The truth is even worse than you think.
Oh, boy.
So here's what Amit wrote and posted publicly on LinkedIn, a platform Microsoft purchased. He wrote, last week, Senator Ron Wyden sent a letter to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Trade Commission, asking that they hold Microsoft accountable for a repeated pattern of negligent cybersecurity practices, which has enabled Chinese espionage against the United States government. According to data from Google Project Zero, Microsoft products have accounted for an aggregate 42.5% of all 0 days discovered since 2014. He writes, Microsoft's lack of transparency applies to breaches, irresponsible security practices, and to vulnerabilities, all of which expose their customers to risks they are deliberately kept in the dark about. In March 2023, so just this past March, a member of Tenable's research team was investigating Microsoft's Azure platform and related services. The researcher discovered an issue which would enable an unauthenticated attacker to access cross-tenant applications and sensitive data, such as authentication secrets. To give you an idea of how bad this is, our team very quickly discovered authentication secrets to a bank. They were so concerned about the seriousness and the ethics of the issue that we immediately notified Microsoft. Did Microsoft quickly fix the issue that could effectively lead to the breach of multiple customers' networks and services? Of course not. They took more than 90 days to implement a partial fix, and only for new applications loaded in the service. That means that as of today, and he wrote this last week, the bank I referenced above is still vulnerable more than 120 days since we reported the issue, as are all of the other organizations that had launched the service prior to the fix. And to the best of our knowledge, they still have no idea that they are at risk and therefore can't make an informed decision about compensating controls and other risk mitigating actions. Microsoft claims that they will fix the issue by the end of September, meaning end of next month, 4 months after we notified them. That's grossly irresponsible, if not blatantly negligent. We know about the issue, Microsoft knows about the issue, and hopefully threat actors don't. Cloud providers, he says, have long espoused the shared responsibility model. That model is irretrievably broken, if your cloud vendor doesn't notify you of issues as they arise and apply fixes openly. What you hear from Microsoft is just trust us. But what you get back is very little transparency and a culture of toxic obfuscation. How can a CISO, a CISO, board of directors, or executive team believe that Microsoft will do the right thing given the fact patterns and current behaviors? Microsoft's track record puts us all at risk. And it's even worse than we thought.
Ugh. Wow.
A culture of toxic obfuscation.
I love that.
Okay, now, by looking at the facts through the years, we've documented a great many instances where Microsoft's behavior, whether apparently deliberate or inadvertent, yet either way quite difficult to see as anything other than we're so big we don't need to care and you can't make us, has clearly damaged their own customers, even significantly. But their enterprise and government customers are as captive as I am. I'm held captive by my decades-long investment in Windows and by the fact that there is no viable alternative to Windows for some of the things I want to do. I depend upon many tools that are only hosted on Windows. And Microsoft's big enterprise customers have invested massively in their own solutions, which are also not portable to any other platform. The incredible power this position gives Microsoft should not be underestimated. It leaves the entire world asking, "Please, sir, may I have some more soup?" Amit Yoran's posting on LinkedIn prompted an interview by Cyberscoop. They, in turn, Cyberscoop wrote, veteran cybersecurity executive Amit Yoran accused Microsoft on Wednesday of dragging its feet on fixing critical vulnerability affecting its Azure platform, and said the tech giant's slow response illustrates a negligent approach to security. His harsh public critique of Microsoft, a relatively rare event for a high-profile corporate figure in cybersecurity, follows criticism from lawmakers and researchers alike after a recent cyber attack affecting U.S. government officials resulted from a Microsoft security lapse. As the CEO of Tenable, a firm that helps customers understand and mitigate their cybersecurity vulnerabilities, Yoran said he works with hundreds of companies every year to disclose and patch vulnerabilities. Microsoft, he said, consistently fails to proactively and professionally address vulnerabilities in their products. Yoran told Cyberscoop in an interview, quote, "In Microsoft's case, you have a culture which denies the criticality of vulnerabilities," unquote. According to a timeline in a limited blog published to Tenable's website, Microsoft acknowledged the issue the same day it was disclosed on March 30th and confirmed it 4 days later. Tenable asked for an update on June 27th, 90 days later, and was told on July 6th that it was fixed, but Tenable says it was merely a partial fix. Okay, now, where have we heard that before? How many times on this podcast have we noted that, someone at Microsoft who was shown a serious vulnerability by a security researcher and even given a fix for it, apparently didn't even take the time or care to actually understand the underlying problem, and so only half-patched it to resolve one of the problem's symptoms. Anyway, Cyberscoop continues on July 21st. Microsoft told Tenable that it would take until September 28th for a complete fix. Tenable agreed to withhold technical details and proofs of concept until September 28th. In his blog post, Yoran described Microsoft's approach to addressing the issue as grossly irresponsible, if not blatantly negligent. Yoran wrote that, quote, more than 120 days since the vulnerability was reported, the bank in question remains vulnerable, unquote, adding that many vulnerable organizations still have no idea they are at risk and therefore can't make an informed decision about compensating controls and other risk mitigating actions. And then we heard from Microsoft. Get this, they wrote, a spokesperson for Microsoft said that the company, quote, appreciates the collaboration with the security community to responsibly disclose product issues, and that security updates are ultimately, quote, a delicate balance between timeliness and quality, while ensuring maximized customer protection with minimized customer disruption, unquote. Wow. Microsoft said Friday in a blog post that the issue has, quote, been fully addressed for all customers, unquote. So I guess Yoran got their attention with his blog post in LinkedIn. And, oh, what do you know? Just 2 days later, it's been completely fixed. It was going to take until September 28th, but shine a bright light on the problem. Oh, look, it's all fixed. They said no customer remediation action is required and that all affected customers were notified via email starting Friday. Microsoft said its investigation, quote, identified anomalous access only by the security researcher that reported the incident and no other actors.
Unquote. No one's using this. We don't have to worry.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't worry about it. So they said Yoran's broadside against Microsoft comes amid growing scrutiny of Microsoft in Washington after one of the company's products was abused by hackers based in China to steal the email messages of senior U.S. officials. In that incident, hackers based in China were able to steal an encryption key that they could then use to forge authentication tokens, and security researchers have sharply criticized the company for not only allowing an encryption key to be stolen, but for building a computing architecture in which tokens could be forged in this way at all. The incident spurred Oregon Senator Ron Wyden to call Microsoft negligent in its security practices and request that the Department of Justice investigate whether Microsoft's actions in the incident broke the law. Okay, now I'll just say, good luck with that, Washington. A long time ago, when Microsoft was much smaller and far less powerful, it was nearly impossible to hold its behavior to account. There's just no possibility of doing it any longer. They said while Microsoft has insisted that the Chinese operation was highly targeted, research by the cloud security company Wiz suggests the incident may have been more broad than first understood, a claim Microsoft has dismissed as speculative. Right, because Microsoft dismisses as speculative because, after all, a delicate balance is required between timeliness and quality while ensuring maximized customer protection. They said the vulnerability discovered by Tenable allowed an unauthenticated attacker to access cross-tenant applications and sensitive data such as authentication secrets, according to Yoran's blog post. It appears, and everybody agrees, that vulnerability does not exploit the same types of authentication flaws seen in the recent incident involving Chinese hackers, but may add pressure on Microsoft to improve its security practices. Okay, we can hope. Unlikely. Industry professionals and government officials pointed out that the Chinese operation was only detected because a government agency was paying additional money for more sensitive logging capabilities. Microsoft later reversed that policy. Basically, it was charging people for better logging of the activity on their cloud platforms, and they got in a lot of hot water for making money for like just offering more logging that like costs them nothing. Yoran, who has grown increasingly critical of Microsoft in recent years, told Cyberscoop that the company's dominant position in the technology ecosystem makes many computer security researchers hesitant to speak up about its security practices, but that doing so is especially important given the ubiquity of its products. To which I say, exactly. And finally, quote, Microsoft is a pretty strategic problem in the security space, given the pervasiveness of their software, of their infrastructure, Yoran said. I also think they have to be part of the solution. Well, yeah, because no one can make them do anything. So, I'm not a fan of complaining about problems that no one has any power to resolve. As an engineer and technologist, I most enjoy discovering and sharing solutions to problems. But ignoring truly important issues in a podcast that's focused upon security seems negligent too. So we'll just keep perspective, discuss problems, and celebrate those companies who do act quickly and responsibly in the best interests of the users of their products.
Coming up, some very good news from Steve. Steve Gibson has promised for, the last few years, I think, that he would stop doing Security Now on episode 999, which is really less than a year away. I tried to talk him out of it for years, but I couldn't, and I understood. He felt like, he'd said everything there was to be said about security. Well, maybe not. Watch.
Okay, so, Leo, you and I recorded episode 1 of Security Now on August 19th of 2005.
Wow.
Today is August 15th of 2023.
Holy cow.
Which means that with today's podcast number 935, we will have finished our 18th year. And next week's podcast will be the start of our 19th year. And when I went back to check the date, and as you've got it on the screen, of that first podcast, which was, by the way, all of 18 minutes long.
You want to hear a little bit
probably
of it?
I just took a little stop between.
I think it sounds exactly the same, I'll be honest. Oh, no, we didn't have our music yet. This was some other music I was using.
Oh, that's very laid
Leo
back.
Laporte,
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce a brand new podcast to the TWiT lineup. Security Now with Steve Gibson. This is episode 1 for August 18th, 2005.
I like the music.
You all know
It's
Steve
very bluesy.
Gibson. He, of course, appears on TWiT regularly, This Week in Tech. And we've known him for a long time. He's been a regular on the Screensavers and Call for Help. And, is well known to computer users everywhere for his products. He's very well known to consumers for
I used to give you a better intro.
SpinRite, which was the inspiration for Norton Disk Doctor and still runs rings around it. It is the ultimate hard drive diagnostic, recovery, and file saving tool. It
Still is. I say that still every week, except now I say mass storage.
GRC.com. But he's also been a very active consumer advocate, working really hard to help folks.
I think my voice sounds higher, but I don't think it actually is. I think there's a little bit of a bit
the click of death
slip in this thing.
which was that was the zip drive.
Let me play a little bit.
Right. Hassle.
It's
and
funny
you were-
because I
was it you
do,
that kind of
hearing your
talked Iron
voice,
Megan
I
into,
remember that
into
Leo.
admitting
Yeah,
there was a
that
problem?
young Leo.
Actually, I think it was.
And you're on
it was
Skype, so the
our
quality
show.
of your
it was
audio is
the
terrible.
Screensaver
Bring it on
show.
the
That,
Screensavers.
yeah,
Wow.
because they.
I can't
we had
believe
them
we
on
made
the,
this
the
show.
carrier technology, the bot technology,
With you
the
sound
worm
like that.
technology. Everything is like well developed.
You don't
now
sound
and
different, but
poised
it
to
sounds
take
phased a
advantage
little bit.
of anything that happens in Windows.
We
So
got
they've
you a
everything ready to
PR40,
go.
more
They just need a
bandwidth.
hole.
Started
Exactly.
using Zoom.
Yeah.
So as soon as they
and I was on the other
some
side
way
of that
to get
T1
control-
line, so I didn't have
Oh, you had 1.44 megabits.
I didn't have today's
There
bandwidth.
you go.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
If people want to hear this, it's still on the website. And the shortcut is twit.tv/SN1. SN1.
So that episode was titled "As the Worm Turns."
Yeah.
The first internet worms of 2005.
Holy cow.
And its I know, and its description made me shake my head because it reads, "How a never disclosed Windows vulnerability was quickly reverse engineered from the patches to fix it and turned into more than 12 potent and damaging internet worms in 3 days."
Wow.
What does this mean for the future of internet security? And here we are, having just, we're celebrating the 18th birthday of this podcast, and so much has changed and so much has not. So anyway, thanks to feedback from our amazing listeners, one of the things that's been driven home for me during the past 12 years is how much this podcast means to our listeners. And I suppose how much it would be missed, at least for a while, if it were to ever end. Now, obviously, it's not, it's going to end sometime. Unfortunately, Leo,
in 65 episodes.
we're not both going to live forever. When William Shatner, who is currently 92
Who is going to live
years
forever,
old,
I believe. Yes.
I think apparently,
Yes.
He's in remarkable physical and mental health. And of course, he recently took that quite emotional for him ride into orbit and back. He was asked about his secret to long life. And he replied simply, "Don't die." Right? That's it. Don't die.
Yeah.
So I'll confess that while my middle name is not Tiberius, I'm going to do everything to follow the Shatner plan. And thanks to our listeners, it occurs to me that perhaps this podcast should follow the Shatner plan too. As all of our listeners know, I've been talking about ending my involvement with episode 999. I'm here after 18 years, Leo, due to our gentleman's agreement to do a podcast together. And I think that I should remain here as long as that's what everyone wants.
Oh, my God. You just made not only me and everybody in this building, but about 100,000 listeners extremely happy. You're saying you're willing to go beyond $9.99?
So, yes.
How are we going to get to 4 digits? Can we start over at 0?
I've written some code in my life. I can figure out how to change
Steve,
3 digits
be
into
still
4.
my heart. Oh, my gosh. Thank you. On behalf of everybody listening.
It seems to be the case that even after 18 years, everybody still wants this.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And I feel as though that we have a lot of leverage, by which I mean that this podcast appears to matter to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's enough for me.
Lisa just came running in. What? Let me see if I can find a shot with her. Well, you'll have to come around here and do it. She's very happy.
Yay. And we still need to come down and harass you. Now I'll stop because everyone will get mad. But I was like, what?
There's a lot of excitement, and I can hear the cheers in the other room.
Everyone was screaming.
Patrick Delahanty's jumping up and down. Yeah, that's really great.
So
by the way, Patrick just told me he's updated TWiT's code. In fact, he did a couple of years ago to support more than 9,999 podcasts. So, Steve, if you're willing to go $99.99, I'll do it too.
Leo, these first 935, they just flew by. It's like
I was really feeling like you were kind of getting tired of doing it, to be honest with you, but you're not.
Well, as we head into year 19, I think we've at least established that we're not about to run out of material.
Yeah.
So.
By the way, in the description of Security Now 1, it says this short podcast. It literally, I thought at the time that it would be a short podcast. But bad guys just don't rest. Hey, thank you, Steve. And congratulations. That's really, really good news.
I've known for some time, and I thought this is the occasion where on our 18th birthday that I should just say, why stop doing a good thing?
Oh, thank you, Steve. On behalf of the entire internet community, thank you.
So, in a rare occurrence, Apple chose to publicly share a mildly threatening private letter it received last Wednesday, which was addressed to Apple's CEO, of course, Tim Cook. The letter was from a CSAM child sexual abuse material activist by the name of Sarah Gardner. And Apple must have decided that their best strategy was to get out ahead of this, since they shared Sarah's letter as the preface to theirs, which they also shared in full. And I mean shared publicly. In terms of the way the future is going to take shape, the biggest thing happening today, I think, in the public policy sphere is the debate and struggle over the trade-off between privacy and surveillance. The devices we all now carry with us 24/7 are capable of providing more of either privacy or surveillance than anything ever before. Since this is a significant move on Apple's part, representing a definitive change of stance and policy, I want to share first Sarah's unsubtle letter, followed by Apple's response. So this Sarah Gardner, she wrote it to, and in the letter that was published, it was redacted, but I'm sure it was written to Tim Apple. She said, "Dear Tim, this exact time 2 years ago, we were so excited that Apple, the most valuable and prestigious tech company in the world, acknowledged that child sexual abuse images and videos have no place in iCloud. It was an announcement that took bravery and vision. We can live in a world where user privacy and child safety can coexist. That is why it was so disappointing when you paused and then quietly killed this plan in December of 2022. We firmly believe that the solution you unveiled not only positioned Apple as a global leader in user privacy, but also promised to eradicate millions of child sexual abuse images and videos from iCloud. The detection of these images and videos respects the privacy of survivors who have endured these abhorrent crimes, a privilege they undeniably deserve. I'm writing to let you know that I am part of a developing initiative involving concerned child safety experts and advocates who intend to engage with you and your company, Apple, on your continued delay in implementing critical technology that can detect child sexual abuse images and videos in iCloud. We are asking you to honor your original intention to detect, report, and remove child sexual abuse images and videos from iCloud, create a robust reporting mechanism for users to report child sexual abuse images and videos to Apple. We want to alert you to our presence and our intention to take our very reasonable requests public in 1 week's time. Should you want to discuss our campaign over the course of the next week or after we've launched, I can be reached at this email address. We welcome the opportunity to discuss these important issues with you and hear what Apple plans to do in order to address these concerns. Child sexual abuse is a difficult issue that no one wants to talk about, which is why it gets silenced and left behind. We are here to make sure that doesn't happen. Kind regards, Sarah Gardner, CEO of the HEAT Initiative. Okay, so in other words, Tim Cook, you have 1 week to intercede in our intention to start making loud noises about your refusal to do your duty, she says, or else. Okay, so this Sarah Gardner is the former vice president of external affairs for the nonprofit organization Thorn, which apparently they want to be one in Apple's side, which works to use new technologies to combat child exploitation online and sex trafficking. 2 years ago, in 2021, Thorn loudly applauded Apple's plan to develop an iCloud CSAM scanning feature. In a statement to Wired over this recent event, Sarah Gardner wrote, Apple is one of the most successful companies in the world with an army of world-class engineers. It is their responsibility to design a safe, privacy-forward environment that allows for the detection of known child sexual abuse images and videos. For as long as people can still share and store a known image of a child being raped in iCloud, she wrote, we will demand that they do better. Okay, so the following day, last Thursday, August 31st, Eric Neuenschwander, Apple's Director of User Privacy and Child Safety, replied on behalf of Tim Cook to Sarah Gardner. He addressed the letter to Ms. Sarah Gardner, CEO, Heat Initiative. Dear Ms. Gardner, thank you for your recent letter inquiring about the ways Apple helps keep children safe. Right. We're grateful for the tireless efforts of the child safety community and believe that there is much good that we can do by working together. Child sexual abuse material is abhorrent, and we are committed to breaking the chain of coercion and influence that makes children susceptible to it. We're proud of the contributions we've made so far and intend to continue working collaboratively with child safety organizations, technologists, and governments on enduring solutions that help protect the most vulnerable members of our society. Our goal has been and always will be to create technology that empowers and enriches people's lives while helping to keep them safe. With respect to helping kids stay safe, we have made meaningful contributions toward this goal by developing a number of innovative technologies. We've deepened our commitment to the communication safety feature that we first made available in December 2021. Communication safety is designed to intervene and offer helpful resources to children when they receive or attempt to send messages that contain nudity. The goal is to disrupt grooming of children by making it harder for predators to normalize this behavior. In our latest releases, we've expanded the feature to more easily and more broadly protect children. First, the feature is on by default for all child accounts.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, but your game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. But you already knew all that. What you may not know is that TWiT now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club TWiT Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club TWiT exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club TWiT member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.
Security now.